Welcome, ladies and gentlemen of the press and the media. As you know, I'm the Vice-Chancellor of the University of Cape Town, Dr. Max Price, and it's a pleasure to meet with you again and to give you some updates on the developments on our campuses. It has to be said that in a matter of a week, the terrain of higher education has changed dramatically. It's changed on our campuses, it's changed in government, it's changed in the higher education ministry, and this is a change that has been a long time coming. We've been trying to get the funding of higher education taken seriously and funded adequately. Unfortunately, the eruption, the national movement, followed years of declining funding for higher education. That was the most significant precursor that has led us to this point. Hopefully, this will take us forward and we will get the funding of higher education onto a more stable foothold. It's not only been the funding, of course, we're in a country which is facing increasing inequality, degrees of poverty, which means that the affordability of higher education for those poor families has been declining, and the adequacy of the NSFAS, the National Students Financial Aid Scheme, there's been an increasing gap between the need and what has been able to be funded. And so, not surprisingly, students across the country who have been unable to complete their studies or unable to access higher education have been expressing their voice. A third precursor which has led us to this point has been, particularly at the University of Cape Town, but also elsewhere, the debates about insourcing and outsourcing. Many of these services used to be part of the university's core business 20 years ago, or core activities. About 15 to 20 years ago, many were outsourced to independent companies, and since then there have been campaigns to have them re-insourced. Those campaigns have been resisted largely because of the expense of insourcing, and in the face of inadequate funding, this has been an obstacle and hasn't happened. The unprecedented national social action has focused all of our minds and has resulted in the dramatic agreement by the government that if the universities agree to go for a 0% increase next year, then they will come to the party with most, if not all, of the money for that. It has to be said that we still haven't seen how much they will be bringing and therefore how much we will have to find, but it was the commitment from the President to do that that enabled the universities to say there will be 0 fee increase next year, and this is the case at UCT, 0 increase for tuition, 0 increase for residences, and in the case of UCT, I can't speak for other campuses, there will be no increase for students from the African continent either. So it applies to South African students, SADC students, and African students. The second issue is the decision on insourcing. This is something that we've focused all our energy over the last 3-4 days to analyze and understand what the implications would be, what the financial implications would be, and we decided that we will commit to insourcing. We've signed an agreement with NAHAWU, which is the union that represents most of the workers in the outsourced companies at UCT, and we have said that we will reverse insource. We will insource those workers as the contracts with those companies come to an end in each case. The consequences of all of these decisions are significant and severe. With respect to the fees, in the short term, government has promised to make good most of that shortfall, but in the long term there has to be a fundamental rethink about fee structures, student financial aid, and core funding. And the Minister, as you probably know, has set up a task team to work on that over the next 6 months so that we do not face this crisis when the 2017 fees are being considered. On the issue of insourcing, there too the Minister created a task team. He announced it about a week ago. And that task team will look at insourcing and outsourcing across the campuses to do a sort of audit, find out what the state is, understand the costs and benefits of insourcing, and then look at whether the higher education budget is able to fund us in order to insource. I think most of us feel that insourcing is what we would like to do, and the key obstacle, the key problem is the finances. But thirdly, there will be undoubtedly belt-tightening, austerity within our university, and that will take many forms. At this point, I'm not in a position to identify exactly what those forms are. There is a fourth area for helping fund the shortfall. We've been really happy to receive many offers from the parents and families of wealthier students who understand the problems of funding higher education, who acknowledge that they can afford the fees that we charge. These fees are often cheaper, for example, than the fees of private schools, and who are saying that they are willing to pay the increases in order to ensure that other people have better access and that the quality of education that we offer at UCT is preserved. We've also had many alumni asking us to set up a special fund which they can contribute to ensure that we can meet the deficits. This we are doing as we speak, and we will be appealing to alumni, to parents of our students, and indeed to the corporate sector to help fund the costs of both insourcing and zero fee increases. I have confidence, in short, that the university community will be able to pull together and resolve this challenge and preserve the position of the university, the outstanding reputation that it has, the extent and depth of research and postgraduate study, and indeed the access that we have always provided for all students regardless of their income. I want to say something finally about the nature of the student protests and staff protests across the country. By and large, they have been peaceful, but we've seen scenes on television of violence, of intimidation, of vandalism, of the obstruction and interference with the rights of others to go about their business. And I have to say that we condemn that form of protest. It is not acceptable, and we must reject it. The majority of students, I believe, have shown their solidarity and their support in legitimate ways, in ways that we are proud of. They are the future leaders of the country, and the way that they articulate the demands, the way they have presented their case in the meetings I've been in with the minister, with the president, and in direct meetings, is really something to be enormously proud of and to give us huge confidence in the future leadership of the country. We're working very hard to restore the campus to normal. We have our basic services, since the agreement with Nahawu, which we signed yesterday, the basic services are working again, and we hope to have them all functioning within 48 hours, and we hope to have the campus properly open by Monday the 2nd. Well, first for 2016, they haven't committed to cover the whole shortfall. I think we're going to have to find 25-30% of the shortfall. So they are covering most of it. On the longer term funding, unless we were to go back to the regular fee increases, this would not be a solution. And so we have to, so there isn't yet a solution to that. The task team will look at that over the next 6 months. I think that we have to we have to investigate and propose a system which has differentiated fees linked to income, and therefore also differentiated fee increases. It seems to me that we need to be able to protect the poor, and so have very low fees for those students and almost 0% increases year on year, but that for those who can afford the full fees, they should be paying the fees, and the increases should be what they need to be to match the inflationary increases of universities. And in between, there should be some sort of sliding scale so that people pay on a pro rata basis. That would, for me, be the first element of a longer term solution. And what that means by implication is that I cannot support a call for free university education, which is the call of many student formations. The call I can support is for free education for the poor or for those in need. The second element, I think, of a funding system is probably some sort of graduate tax. There are there's plenty of research and evidence that having the benefit of a university education massively increases your prospects for getting a job, for employment, and massively increases what you earn when you're in a job. That education currently is subsidized by the taxpayer or by government well over 50%. But there's good reason for government to fund higher education because it's a public good and it benefits the economy. It's part of the development investment. But the individual benefits significantly, and there's no reason why the individual shouldn't be expected to give something back to society so that we can strengthen the higher education system and that we can create financial access for others who can't afford it. And so I think some sort of graduate tax seems to me part of the solution. And then beefing up the financial aid system, to have a financial aid system that covers the costs but not for everyone, or only covers parts of the costs of the fees, is not helpful, because if people can't cover all of their costs, they're still either going to go hungry because they can't buy food, or they're not going to pay the last tranche of their fees towards the end of the year, and then they can't get their results and they get excluded because the fees aren't fully covered. So a partial financial aid system does not help us. We need a financial aid system that covers the fees fully. So we've been, as you say, in contact with the Department of Home Affairs to ask them to show significant leniency and flexibility. We can't at the moment do more because we don't yet know when exams will start and end and when graduations will be. We hope that we'll keep graduations to the planned dates, but once we know for sure, then we'll go back to the Department of Home Affairs with a request for details. We've also said that students who are going overseas. We have a lot of students who are on a semester abroad system. They come here just for a semester from overseas, and they have to go back to study. And so delaying returning not only means they can't write our exams. Well, if the exams are delayed, not only can't they write the exams, but they can't get back in time for their next semesters. And what we've said is we'll arrange for them to write their exams in their home universities. We'll arrange invigilation for them so that they can write at the same time as our students are writing, but in their home universities. Thanks, Carla. So the first question is, outsourcing at UCT and most other universities happened in the late 1990s. And the main reason, there are a couple of reasons, maybe say I'll offer three. The main reason is because it's cheaper. A second reason is because it's often more efficient, so you get better value for money. And just to give you an example of why that happens, it happens because you have economies of scale. If you need to run a catering service, and you run that catering service for one plant, one campus, you have to have a supply chain of food, you have to be able to buy the food cheaply, you have to have warehouses, you have to train chefs, you have to have dietitians who work out the menus, you have to have relief staff when people are on leave. You also have to absorb the cyclical nature of a university, which is that you have term time when you need everyone to be there and feed thousands of people, and then quiet time during the holidays when you need to feed relatively few people, and so the actual size of the workforce you need on site changes. Now, if you are doing this all on your own, you have to staff it up at the full level for the whole year. You have to have all of the infrastructure to do that. If you're an outsourced company and you provide catering services to companies, to many campuses, to all sorts of clients, then you generally can achieve economies of scale, which makes the whole enterprise cheaper. And that's the theory, and that is, in fact, most people find outsourcing cheaper. Then your second question, I think, related to the benefits of student tuition. Any staff member at UCT is entitled to a 75% reduction on the fees for themselves and for their dependents, like their children. we some time ago extended the very same benefits to outsourced workers. So our outsourced workers, or the workers who are employed by outsourced companies, also their children have the 75% discount and the same benefits. Now, in the case of, say, my children, they would still have to pay the 25%, and that discount only relates to tuition. So if they needed to be in residence, they would still have to pay residence fees. There would be no discount. There's no discount for our employees for residence fees. But in the case of the outsourced workers, in addition to the discount, they would also get bursaries which are linked to our general financial aid system that would cover their residences and the 25%. So the truth is that the cost of higher education for outsourced workers currently is almost zero, whereas the cost for employees is 25% of the fee plus the full cost of residence and other costs. And of course, with insourcing, there would be no differentiation. It would be the same. They would get the same benefits. Our discussion with the union and the agreement which is on the web, which we put on the web, says that we're committed to starting the exams on the 9th of November. So to the extent of a final date, that's what it is. But this only happened last night. We have not yet concluded the discussions with the students. We're not yet able to guarantee that the exams won't be disrupted. And until we can't make a commitment to the date. So our best guess is 9th of November, but it's not finalized yet.